Clara Mae Dawson dropped to her knees in the snow, cradling a stranger's baby against her chest. The infant wasn't breathing. She pressed her lips to his frozen mouth and blew once, twice, 3 times, while his father collapsed beside her, clutching the other twin's sobbing words she couldn't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. She'd sworn never to open her door again. But here she was fighting death itself on her own front porch, wondering if God was punishing her or giving her one last chance. If you want to see how this story ends, subscribe to my channel and follow Clara's journey to the very last word. Drop a comment with your city. I want to know how far this story travels. Clara. Mae Dawson hadn't prayed in 3 years. Not since the night her mother stopped breathing in her arms. Not since she'd stood alone at 2 graves watching dirt fall on the only people who'd ever loved her. Prayer felt like begging, and Clara had sworn she'd never beg anyone for anything again. But tonight, with the wind screaming across the Wyoming plains and the temperature dropping faster than hope, she found herself whispering words she'd long forgotten. Just let me make it through one more winter. Just one more. She stood at the kitchen window, watching the snow pile against the barn. The fire crackled behind her, throwing shadows across the walls. Outside, the world had turned white and violent, a blizzard, unlike anything she'd seen in years. Her father would have known what to do. Samuel Dawson had survived wars, droughts, and wolves. But Samuel Dawson was dead, and Clara was alone. She turned from the window and reached for the kettle. That's when she heard it. Not the wind, not the shutters. Something else. A sound that made her blood freeze colder than the storm outside. A man's voice, weak, broken, crying. Please, please someone, help us. Clara grabbed the shotgun from behind the door. Her hands were steady. They always were, but her heart pounded against her ribs like it wanted out. She'd heard stories. Drifters who used the storms to find lonely ranches. Women who opened their doors and never opened them again. Please, my babies. Babies. Clara's grip tightened on the gun. She pressed her ear to the door. Ma'am, if anyone's in there, my boys are dying. I ain't asking for myself, just them. Please. She closed her eyes. Every lesson her father had taught her said to stay inside. Lock the door. Wait for morning. But her mother's voice whispered something different. You never turn away a child in need, Clara Mae. Never. She pulled back the bolt and opened the door. The wind hit her like a fist, snow swirling into the house, stinging her eyes. At first she saw nothing but white. Then she saw him. A man on his knees, collapsed in the snow at the edge of her porch. His coat was thin, torn, soaked through with ice. His hat was gone, and his dark hair was matted with frost. But it was what he held that stopped Clara's heart. 2 bundles, wrapped in rags, pressed against his chest, like they were all that mattered in the world. Babies. Twin babies. And they weren't moving. Mister? Clara stepped forward, gun still raised. Mister, can you hear me? He lifted his head. His eyes were hollow, rimmed with red, filled with something that looked like the end of hope. They're so cold, he whispered. I can't get them warm. I tried. I walked all day. I thought. His voice broke. His body swayed. Please, ma'am. I ain't asking for charity. Just somewhere to die warm. That's all. Just let them die warm. Clara lowered the gun. Later, she wouldn't remember making the decision. Wouldn't remember dropping the shotgun or stepping out into the snow. She'd only remember the weight of that baby in her arms, so light, so terribly light, and the blue tint to his lips. Inside now. Move. She grabbed one of the bundles and turned toward the house. The man tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He fell forward into the snow, still clutching the second child. Get up. Clara's voice was sharp. I can't carry you both. Get up. I can't. My legs. You can and you will. Those babies need a father who can walk. Now get up." Something in her voice cut through his exhaustion. He pushed himself to his feet, swaying like a man drunk on cold, and stumbled after her into the house. The warmth hit them both like a wall. Clara kicked the door shut and carried the baby straight to the fire. She knelt on the braided rug, fingers fumbling with the frozen rags wrapped around him. "Come here. Bring the other one. Now." The man collapsed beside her, laying the second bundle down with hands that shook so badly he could barely control them. "What are their names?" Clara demanded, unwrapping the first baby. His skin was gray. His tiny chest rose and fell in shallow, labored gasps. "Ezra. That one's Ezra. The other's Elijah." "How long were you out there?" I don't know. Hours. We got caught in the open when the storm hit. I couldn't find shelter. I just kept walking." Clara pressed her hand to Ezra's chest. His heartbeat was there, faint but there. "He's alive. Barely." She looked at the other baby Elijah. His eyes were closed, his body limp. "This one..." The man's face crumpled. "He stopped crying an hour ago. I thought maybe he was just sleeping." Clara grabbed Elijah and pressed her fingers to his throat. Nothing. She tilted his tiny head back, opened his mouth, and blew a small breath past his blue lips. "What are you?" "Shut up and hold the other one, skin to skin. Take off your shirt and hold him against your chest." The man stared at her. "Now." He fumbled with his frozen coat, his shirt, until he held Ezra against his bare chest, covering them both with the quilt Clara threw at him. Clara breathed into Elijah's mouth again. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, little one. Don't you quit on me." She rubbed his chest in small circles, pressed, breathed, pressed, breathed. The man watched her tears streaming down his face, his body racked with silent sobs. "Please," he choked. "Please, God, not both of them. Take me, not them." Clara didn't answer. She kept working, breathing, pressing, praying without words. And then, a cough. Tiny, weak, but real. Elijah's body jerked, his face scrunched, and he let out a cry, thin and reedy like a kitten's mewl, but the most beautiful sound Clara had ever heard. "He's breathing." She pulled him against her chest, wrapping him inside her shawl, pressing him to her warmth. "He's breathing." The man let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a laugh. It was something in between, something broken and grateful and terrified all at once. "Thank you," he gasped. "Thank you, ma'am. I can't. Don't thank me yet. They're not out of danger." Clara stood still, holding Elijah. "We need to get them warm, really warm. And you need to tell me who you are and why you're walking across Wyoming in November with 2 infants." The man looked up at her. In the firelight, she could see him clearly for the first time. He was younger than she'd thought. 35, maybe 36. Dark hair, dark eyes, a jaw that might have been handsome before exhaustion carved it hollow. His hands were workers' hands, calloused, scarred, strong, despite their trembling. "My name's Jonah," he said quietly. "Jonah McAllister. And I'm running." "Running from what?" He closed his eyes. "From a dead man's brother who wants to make me pay for something that wasn't my fault." Clara stared at him. A dozen questions burned in her throat, but she swallowed them. There would be time for answers later. Right now, there were 2 babies who needed warmth more than she needed truth. "The rocking chair," she said, nodding toward the corner. "Sit there with Ezra. Keep him against your skin. I'll heat some milk." Jonah moved slowly, painfully to the chair. He sank into it like a man who hadn't sat down in days. Clara worked quickly, warming milk over the stove, testing it against her wrist, the way her mother had taught her. When it was ready, she brought it to Jonah and showed him how to feed Ezra with a cloth dipped in the liquid. Small amounts. Let him suck on the cloth. Don't flood his mouth. Jonah's hands were still shaking, but he managed. Ezra latched onto the cloth weakly, his tiny mouth working, his color slowly returning. Clara sat across from them, feeding Elijah the same way. The fire crackled between them. Outside, the wind howled like something hungry. "How old are they?" she asked. 7 months. "Where's their mother?" Jonah's jaw tightened. He didn't look up from Ezra's face. "Dead. 3 months ago." Clara felt the word land in her chest like a stone. She knew that weight. She carried one just like it. "I'm sorry." "So am I." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy. Two people who knew what loss tasted like, sitting together in a warm room while death prowled outside. "You can't travel with them," Clara said finally. "Not in winter, not like this. You'll kill them." "I know." Jonah's voice cracked. "But I can't stop. If I stop, they'll find us." "Who?" He shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I won't bring my trouble to your door, ma'am. Soon as the storm breaks, we'll go." "Go where you don't even have a horse." "I'll figure something out. I always do." Clara watched him, this stranger in her house, holding his son like he was made of glass. His whole body bent around protecting something precious. She thought of her father who'd died protecting this land. She thought of her mother who'd died waiting for Clara to come home. She thought of herself 3 years alone, turning away every hand that reached for her. "The barn," she said. Jonah looked up. "There's a room in the back of the barn. It's dry, warm enough with the animals' heat. You can stay there until the storm passes." His face shifted surprise, then suspicion, then something that looked almost like hope. "Ma'am, I can't. My name is Clara Dawson, and I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a trade." "What kind of trade?" "You work, you earn your keep. Chop wood, mend fences, whatever needs doing. In exchange, you and those boys get shelter until you're strong enough to travel." Jonah stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Why?" Clara stood cradling Elijah against her shoulder. "Because 3 years ago, I was alone in a storm and nobody came. Because those boys didn't choose to be born to a man on the run. Because—" She stopped, swallowed. "Because it's what my mother would have done." Jonah blinked. His eyes were wet, but no tears fell. "I don't know how to repay this." "Then don't. Just keep those babies alive." She turned toward the bedroom, Elijah warm and breathing against her chest. "Miss Clara." She paused. "Thank you. Not just for opening the door. For not giving up on him." He looked down at Ezra, then back at her. Most people would have let him go. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Something she'd thought was frozen solid. "I'm not most people, Mr. McAllister." She walked into the bedroom and laid Elijah in the center of her bed, surrounding him with pillows and quilts. His color was better now, pink instead of gray, and his breathing had steadied. When she returned to the main room, Jonah was still in the rocking chair, Ezra asleep against his chest. His own eyes were closing, exhaustion finally winning. "You can't sleep in that chair." "I'm fine, ma'am. I mean, Miss Clara." "You're not fine. You're half dead and stubborn." She pointed to the rug by the fire. "Lie down there. Keep Ezra with you. I'll watch them both. You need sleep too. I've survived on less." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Maybe he saw something in her face that told him arguing was useless. Maybe he was simply too tired to fight. He lowered himself to the rug, keeping Ezra pressed to his heart, and pulled the quilt over them both. "Miss Clara." "What?" "That thing you said, about being alone in a storm and nobody coming." He paused. "I'm sorry nobody came for you." Clara turned away, staring into the fire so he wouldn't see her face. "Get some sleep, Mr. McAllister." She sat in the rocking chair he'd vacated her mother's shawl, wrapped around her shoulders, and watched the flames dance. Outside the storm raged on, but inside something else was happening. Something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She wasn't sure if it was hope or fear. Maybe they were the same thing. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat in the rocking chair watching the fire burn down to embers, watching the stranger on her floor curl around his son like a shield, watching the snow pile against the windows until she couldn't see anything but white. Every few hours she checked the babies, fed them, changed their rags, felt their foreheads for fever. Ezra was stable. His breathing was strong, his color good. Elijah worried her more. He was weaker, slower to nurse his tiny body, fighting harder than his brothers. But he was fighting. That was something. Around 4 a.m, Jonah stirred. "You should sleep," he mumbled, half awake. "I'll watch them." "You can barely keep your eyes open." "I've watched them every night for 3 months alone. I can handle one more." Clara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she recognized. The bone-deep exhaustion of grief. The hollow determination of someone who had nothing left but duty. "How did she die?" Clara asked quietly. "Your wife." Jonah's face went still. "She wasn't my wife. Not officially. We were going to marry after the harvest, but—" He trailed off. "She went into labor early. Something went wrong. There was so much blood and I couldn't. I rode for the doctor, but by the time I got back—" His voice broke. Clara knew that silence. She'd lived in it for 3 years. "She died in my mother's arms," Jonah whispered. "But she saw the boys first. She held them. She named them." He took a shaky breath. "Last thing she said was, 'Keep them safe.' That's all. Just keep them safe." Clara felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back. "You're honoring her," she said. "Every step you took to get here, every mile in that storm, you're honoring her." Jonah shook his head. "I'm failing her. I can't even find them a home. Can't even keep them warm." "You found this door, didn't you?" He looked up at her. "You found this door," Clara repeated. "In the middle of a blizzard, in the middle of nowhere, you found the one door that would open. That's not failure. That's something else." "What?" Clara thought about it. She thought about her mother's voice pushing her to open that door. She thought about Elijah's first breath gasping back to life under her hands. "Maybe it's grace," she said finally. "Or maybe it's just stubborn luck. Either way, you're here. They're alive, and tomorrow we figure out the rest." Jonah stared at her for a long moment. "Who are you, Clara Dawson?" "Just a woman with a ranch and too many empty rooms." "No." He shook his head slowly. "You're more than that. I just can't figure out what." Clara stood and walked to the window. The snow had stopped. The first pale light of dawn was creeping across the horizon, turning the world gray and silver. "Get some sleep, Mr. McAllister. The storm's over. We've got work to do." By mid-morning, the ranch had transformed. Jonah, despite Clara's protests, had dragged himself out to the barn to check on the animals. She found him 30 minutes later forking hay into the horse's stall, moving like every muscle screamed. "You're going to kill yourself." "Animals don't care if I'm tired. They still need feeding." Clara grabbed the pitchfork from his hands. "I've been feeding these animals alone for 3 years. I can manage one more day. Go inside. Check on your boys." "They're sleeping. I checked before I came out." "Then sit down before you fall down." Jonah leaned against the barn wall, breathing hard. "You always this bossy." "Only with fools who don't know their limits." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. It was the first one she'd seen, and it changed his whole appearance, made him look younger, less haunted. "My mother used to say the same thing." Smart woman. She was. Died when I was 12. Fever took her. Clara felt the familiar ache of loss. It never went away, that ache. It just became part of you, like a scar. Seems like we've both lost a lot of mothers, she said quietly. Jonah nodded. Seems like. They stood in silence for a moment, the cold air fogging their breath. Then Clara handed him back the pitchfork. Finish the hay, then come inside. I'll make breakfast. Yes, ma'am, I mean Miss Clara. Just Clara. He met her eyes. Just Jonah then. Something passed between them, an understanding maybe, or the beginning of one. Clara turned and walked back to the house, her boots crunching in the snow. She didn't look back, but she felt his eyes on her the whole way. Breakfast was simple oatmeal dried apples, coffee strong enough to strip paint. But Jonah ate like it was a feast, savoring every bite. When's the last time you had a real meal? Clara asked. 3 days ago. Maybe 4. I ran out of food 2 days into the journey. Been eating snow and hope ever since. That's no way to travel. It was the only way I had. Clara poured him more coffee. You said someone's chasing you. Who? Jonah's hand tightened around the cup. A man named Colton Pemberton. His brother Garrett was interested in Hannah. Before me. Interested? Obsessed. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Followed her everywhere. Sent gifts she didn't want. When she chose me, he lost his mind. Jonah stared into his coffee. He came to our place one night. Drunk. Angry. Said if he couldn't have her, no one would. Clara felt ice creep down her spine. What happened? I tried to make him leave. He threw the first punch. We fought. He fell. Hit his head on a rock. Jonah's voice was flat empty. He died 2 days later, and his brother, the county sheriff, decided I was a murderer. Was it murder? Jonah looked up, his eyes raw with pain. I was defending my family, my home. But Colton doesn't care about truth. He cares about revenge. Clara absorbed this. She thought about the men she knew in town, the ones who thought a woman shouldn't own land, shouldn't live alone, shouldn't make her own choices. So you ran. I didn't have a choice. Stay and hang or run and give my boys a chance. He laughed bitterly. Some chance. I nearly killed them in that storm. But you didn't. They're alive. You're alive. That means something. Jonah shook his head. It means I'm running out of time. Colton won't stop. He'll hire trackers, bounty hunters, whoever he needs. Eventually he'll find me. Then we make sure you're ready when he does. Jonah's head snapped up. Clara set down her cup. You think I'm going to let you walk out of here tomorrow and die in another storm? Those babies need their father, and I need help on this ranch. Miss Clara. Clara. And I'm not being noble, I'm being practical. Winter's hard enough alone. You're strong, you can work, and you have 2 babies who need a roof over their heads. So here's the deal. She leaned forward. You stay through winter. You work. You earn your keep. And when spring comes, if you still need to run, you'll be strong enough to do it right. Jonah stared at her. Why would you do this for a stranger? Clara thought about the question. Thought about 3 years of silence and loneliness, and proving to everyone that she didn't need anyone. Because I was a stranger once, she said finally. And someone should have helped me. No one did. So maybe I'm just evening the score. Jonah was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and offered his hand. You've got yourself a deal, Clara Dawson. I'll work harder than any man you've ever hired, and I'll make sure you never regret opening that door. Clara took his hand. His grip was strong despite everything. See that you do, Jonah McAllister. They shook once. And somewhere outside, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, spilling pale gold light across the frozen land. Clara didn't believe in signs, but she noticed it anyway. The first week passed faster than Clara expected. Jonah worked like a man possessed. Before dawn, he was already in the barn. After sunset, he was still chopping wood. He fixed the broken fence on the north side, patched the hole in the chicken coop roof, and cleared the snow from every path on the property. Clara watched him from the kitchen window, shaking her head. "You're going to work yourself into an early grave," she said one morning when he came in for breakfast. Jonah set down his axe and flexed his fingers. "Rather die working than die running. There's a third option. Living." He looked at her with those dark, tired eyes. "Haven't tried that one in a while." Clara poured him coffee without asking. It had become routine now, coffee at dawn, breakfast together, then work until the light failed. The babies slept in the corner of the kitchen, warm and content in the cradle Jonah had built from scrap wood. "Ezra smiled today," Clara said. Jonah's whole face changed. "He did, while I was feeding him. Just a little one, but real." Jonah crossed to the cradle and knelt beside it, touching Ezra's cheek with one calloused finger. The baby gurgled and kicked his feet. "Hey, little man," Jonah whispered. "You smiling at Miss Clara? That's good. She deserves smiles." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She turned back to the stove. "Elijah's still not eating as much as he should." "I know." Jonah's voice tightened. "He's always been the weaker one. Even in the womb, Hannah said she felt him less. He'll catch up. He just needs time." "Time." Jonah laughed softly. "That's the one thing I'm not sure we have." Clara wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Every day that passed was another day closer to spring. Another day closer to whoever was hunting him. "Eat your breakfast," she said instead. "The fence won't fix itself." Jonah stood and took his place at the table. They ate in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the babies cooing softly. It felt almost like a family. Clara pushed that thought away as fast as it came. The second week brought visitors. Clara was in the barn when she heard hooves. She grabbed her rifle and stepped outside, squinting against the winter sun. 2 riders approached from the east road. She recognized the first one immediately. Winnie Tucker sat astride her old gray mare, wrapped in so many scarves she looked like a moving blanket pile. Behind her rode a younger man Clara didn't recognize. "Clara Mae Dawson," Winnie called out, her voice carrying across the snow. "You going to shoot me or invite me in for coffee?" Clara lowered the rifle. "Depends on why you're here." Winnie dismounted with surprising agility for a woman of 62. "Heard you've got company. Wanted to see for myself before the whole town starts talking." "Too late for that, I reckon." "You reckon right." Winnie marched up to the porch, stomping snow from her boots. "Half of Willow Springs thinks you've lost your mind. The other half thinks you've found yourself a husband." "I haven't found anything except trouble." "Same thing in my experience." Winnie pushed past her into the house, then stopped dead. Jonah stood by the fireplace holding Elijah against his shoulder. He'd been bouncing the baby gently, trying to settle him, and now he froze like a deer caught in lantern light. "Well," Winnie said slowly, "he's prettier than I expected." "Ma'am." Jonah dipped his head respectfully. Winnie walked closer, examining him like livestock at auction. "You're the one they're all whispering about. The drifter with the babies." "Yes, ma'am." "Got a name. Jonah McAllister." McAllister. Winnie tasted the name. "Kentucky." "Originally, ma'am." "Thought so. You've got that border accent." She turned to Clara. "Where'd you find him?" "He found me. Showed up in the blizzard 2 weeks ago, nearly dead." Winnie's eyes softened slightly. "And the babies?" "His sons. Twins. 7 months old." Winnie looked back at Jonah, at the way he held Elijah, at the gentleness in his scarred hands. "Their mother passed," Jonah said quietly. 3 months ago." Something shifted in Winnie's face. The suspicion faded, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "I lost my son in the war," she said. "He was 22. Had his whole life ahead of him." She reached out and touched Elijah's tiny hand. "You hold on to these boys, Mr. McAllister. You hold on tight." "I intend to, ma'am." Winnie nodded once, then turned back to Clara. "You know what people are saying." "I don't care what people are saying." "You should. Your uncle's been making noise. Says you're unfit to hold the deed. Says you're harboring a vagrant and defiling your father's name. Clara felt her jaw clench. Harlan can go straight to hell. He probably will, but not before he makes your life miserable. Winnie lowered her voice. He's been talking to Judge Morrison, something about a clause in your father's will. Clara went cold. What clause? Something about the land passing to male kin if you don't marry within a reasonable time. I don't know the details, but Harlan seems to think he's found a loophole. Jonah stepped forward. What does that mean? It means, Winnie said, that Clara's uncle wants to steal her land, and he might have legal grounds to do it. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Clara stared at Winnie, her mind racing. She remembered her father signing papers years ago, remembered him grumbling about fool conditions and family nonsense. She'd never asked for details. Never thought she'd need to. When? Clara asked. He's filing a petition next month, after the thaw. Winnie pulled on her gloves. I thought you should know, so you can prepare. Prepare how? Winnie looked at her steadily. That's for you to figure out. Her eyes flicked to Jonah, then back to Clara. But I'd say you've got options you didn't have 2 weeks ago. She left without another word, mounting her mare and riding off with the young man who'd never dismounted. Clara stood on the porch watching until they disappeared. She thinks we should get married. Jonah's voice came from behind her. To save the land. I know what she thinks. Is she right about the clause? Clara turned to face him. I don't know. Maybe. My father signed a lot of papers when he was sick. He wasn't always thinking clearly. So your uncle could really take this place, over my dead body. Jonah studied her face. That's not just talk, is it? You'd fight him for real. This land is all I have left of them. My mother, my father, everything they built. I'm not giving it up to a drunk who's never worked a day in his life. Then what are you going to do? Clara looked out at the snow-covered fields at the barn Jonah had repaired at the fences standing strong against the winter. Whatever I have to. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows. In the next room, she could hear Jonah moving around, settling the babies, humming something low and soft. The clause. The petition. Harlan's smug face when he finally got what he wanted. She threw back the covers and walked to the window. The moon was full, casting silver light across the snow. Beautiful and cold and indifferent. A knock on her door made her jump. Clara. Jonah's voice soft through the wood. You all right? I saw your lamp go out, then come back on. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway, shirt, untucked hair mussed from attempted sleep. I'm fine, just thinking. About the land. About everything. He nodded slowly. I've been thinking too. About what? About leaving. Clara felt something twist in her chest. Leaving? If I go, Harlan loses his ammunition. He can't say you're harboring a vagrant if there's no vagrant to harbor. That's not why he's filing the petition. No, but it's what he'll use. A single woman alone is one thing. A single woman with a strange man living in her barn is another. Jonah's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. I don't want to be the reason you lose this place. Clara stared at him for a long moment. You think that's what I want? For you to leave? I think you've already sacrificed too much for strangers. You're not a stranger anymore. The words hung between them heavier than she'd intended. Jonah swallowed. Clara? Don't. She held up her hand. Don't say whatever you're about to say. Not tonight. Not when I'm too tired to think straight. Then when? Tomorrow, next week, when the ground thaws and we can see what we're actually fighting. She took a breath. Just don't make any decisions yet, please. Jonah looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. I'll stay. For now. For now, Clara repeated. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. What was she doing? She didn't know, but she knew she wasn't ready to find out what this house felt like. Empty again. The third week brought trouble. Clara was feeding the chickens when she heard the wagon. She looked up, shading her eyes against the winter sun, and felt her stomach drop. Harlan Dawson sat on the driver's bench, reins loose in his hands. Beside him was his son, Virgil Jr., wearing a smirk that made Clara's skin crawl. "Morning, niece," Harlan called out as the wagon rolled to a stop. "Thought we'd pay a visit." Clara set down the feed bucket. "You're not welcome here." "Now is that any way to greet family?" Harlan climbed down his boots, sinking into the snow. He was thinner than she remembered, his face more lined, but his eyes still held that mean glint that had frightened her as a child. "You stopped being family when you tried to steal my father's land." "Steal?" Harlan pressed a hand to his chest in mock offense. "I'm trying to protect it. Protect you. A woman alone out here, it's not safe, not proper. I've been alone for 3 years, haven't needed your protection yet." Things change. Harlan's eyes drifted to the barn, where Jonah had emerged, pitchfork in hand. "Seems like they already have." Virgil Jr. jumped down from the wagon, his smirk widening. "That him, the vagrant." "Careful, boy." Jonah's voice was calm, but there was iron underneath. "Words like that can start trouble you don't want." "Trouble?" Virgil laughed. "You're the trouble, friend. Showing up here with your babies and your sob story, taking advantage of a lonely woman. That's enough." Clara stepped between them. "Say what you came to say, Harlan. Then get off my land." Harlan reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. "This is a copy of your father's deed, and this," he pulled out another paper, "is the clause he signed 20 years ago. Read it yourself." Clara took the papers with steady hands. She scanned the legal language, the formal phrases, until she found the section Harlan wanted her to see. "In the event that the female heir remains unmarried beyond the age of 35, or in the absence of legitimate male offspring ownership, shall revert to the nearest male relative." She stopped reading. "You're 34, Harlan said softly. "One more year, Clara. One more year, and this land is mine by law." "This is ridiculous. Pa never meant—" "Doesn't matter what he meant. Matters what he signed." Harlan took a step closer. "I'm offering you a way out. Marry my boy here. Keep your precious land in the family, and everybody's happy." Clara looked at Virgil Jr., his weak chin, his watery eyes, the cruelty lurking behind his smile. "I'd rather burn this place to the ground." Virgil's face reddened. "You ungrateful—" "I said that's enough." Jonah moved to stand beside Clara, his presence solid and warm. "The lady gave you her answer. Time to leave." Harlan's eyes narrowed. "And who exactly are you to give orders on Dawson land? I'm the man who's going to escort you off it if you don't leave willingly." For a moment nobody moved. Then Harlan laughed a cold, ugly sound. "You've made your choice, Clara. Remember that when the judge rules against you." He climbed back onto the wagon. 1 year. Enjoy it while you can." Virgil shot one last venomous look at Jonah before following his father. The wagon rattled away, leaving tracks in the snow like scars. Clara stood frozen, the papers crumpling in her fist. "Clara." Jonah's hand touched her shoulder. "Clara, look at me." She turned. Her eyes were dry, but something in them had broken. "He's right," she whispered. "The clause is real. I remember now. Pa signed it because Harlan threatened to contest the original deed. He thought it didn't matter. Thought I'd be married long before 35. There has to be a way to fight it. How? It's legal, binding. Unless I marry before my birthday." She laughed bitterly. "Unless I produce a legitimate male offspring. God, it's like I'm livestock." Jonah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When's your birthday?" April 15th. "That's 3 months away." "I know." 3 months is a long time. Clara looked at him sharply. Don't. Don't what? Don't offer what I think you're about to offer. Jonah held her gaze. I wasn't going to offer anything. I was going to ask. Ask what? What do you want, Clara? Not what your father wanted, not what Harlan wants. What do you want? Nobody had ever asked her that before. Not once in her entire life. She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. Think about it, Jonah said softly. When you know, tell me. I'll do whatever I can to help you get it. He turned and walked back to the barn, leaving Clara standing alone in the snow, holding her father's broken promise in her hands. That night, Clara dreamed of her mother. Martha Dawson stood in the kitchen, kneading bread the way she always had, her hands dusted with flour, her hair coming loose from its pins. You're thinking too hard, Martha said without looking up. You always did. Mama, what do I do? What does your heart say? My heart doesn't know anything. Martha laughed softly. Hearts know everything, Clara May. We just don't always want to listen. He's a stranger. I've known him 3 weeks. I knew your father 3 days before I agreed to marry him. Martha finally looked up, her eyes warm and knowing. Sometimes time doesn't matter. Sometimes you just know. Know what? Who's worth fighting for? Clara woke with tears on her cheeks and her mother's words echoing in her ears. She lay there until dawn, watching the light creep across the ceiling. Then she got up, got dressed, and walked to the barn. Jonah was already awake, feeding the horses. He turned when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Bad dreams. Good ones. That's worse sometimes. He set down the feed bucket and gave her his full attention. What's wrong? Clara took a breath. I've been thinking about what you asked, what I want. And I want to keep this land. I want to honor my parents' memory. I want to build something that lasts. She paused. And I don't want to do it alone anymore. Jonah went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying... Clara's voice wavered, then steadied. I'm saying that if you're willing, I'd like you to stay. Not just through winter. Longer. How much longer? As long as you want. Jonah crossed the barn, slowly stopping just in front of her. Close enough to touch, but he kept his hands at his sides. Clara, I need you to be clear, because I can't misunderstand this. I'm not proposing marriage. Not yet. I'm not ready for that, and neither are you. She met his eyes. But I'm asking if you'd consider building something with me. A partnership. A life. Whatever that turns into. Even knowing what's chasing me. Especially knowing that. Why? Clara thought about her mother's words. About hearts that know things the mind refuses to accept. Because you showed up at my door half dead holding 2 babies, and instead of begging for yourself, you begged for them. Because you work harder than any man I've ever known and never complain. Because when you look at your sons, I see the kind of father I wish I'd had. She swallowed. And because for the first time in 3 years, I don't feel alone. Jonah was quiet for so long that Clara began to panic. Maybe she'd said too much. Maybe she'd ruined everything. Then he reached out and took her hand. I'm not a good bet, he said quietly. I've got enemies coming for me. I've got nothing to offer but 2 babies and a willing heart. That's more than most. It's less than you deserve. Let me be the judge of what I deserve. Jonah's grip tightened on her hand. Then yes, I'll stay. I'll build with you. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Clara felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen for years. Together, she repeated, and for the first time since her parents died, the word didn't feel like a lie. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. Clara was in the house changing Elijah's diaper when she heard Jonah shout. She grabbed the rifle and ran outside. A man stood at the edge of the property just beyond the fence line. He was tall, thin, dressed in a black coat that looked too fine for Wyoming winter. His hat cast a shadow over his face, but something about his posture made Clara's blood run cold. "That's close enough," Jonah called out. He stood between the stranger and the house, his body tense, his hands empty but ready. The man removed his hat. His face was narrow, clean-shaven, with pale eyes that held no warmth. "Mr. McAllister," he said, his voice carrying across the snow. "You're a hard man to find." Jonah didn't move. "Who are you?" "My name is Silas Crane. I'm a private investigator employed by the Pemberton family of Missouri." He reached into his coat, slowly pulling out a folded document. "I'm here to discuss your future." "I don't have a future with the Pembertons." "That's where you're wrong." Silas took a step forward. "Colton Pemberton has authorized me to offer you a deal. Come back to Missouri, willingly stand before a tribunal, and you'll receive a fair hearing. Refuse and—" He glanced at the house. Things become complicated. "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality. You can't run forever, Mr. McAllister. You have children now, roots, people who depend on you." Silas's pale eyes found Clara. "People who might suffer for your choices." Clara raised the rifle. "Get off my land." Silas smiled thinly. "The lady of the house." "Miss Dawson, I presume." "I won't ask again." "There's no need for violence. I'm simply delivering a message." He tucked the document back into his coat. "You have 1 week to consider the offer, Mr. McAllister. After that, my methods become less civilized." He replaced his hat, turned, and walked away into the trees. Clara kept the rifle raised until he was out of sight. "Jonah?" He turned to her, his face pale. "Who is Colton Pemberton?" Jonah's jaw tightened. "The man who wants me dead." "Tell me everything." "Clara." "Everything." They went inside. Clara made coffee while Jonah paced, his whole body vibrating with tension. "Colton is Garrett's younger brother," Jonah finally said. "He was always the smart one, the dangerous one. Garrett was cruel, but Colton is cold, calculated." "What does he want?" "Justice, or what he calls justice." Jonah stopped pacing. "Garrett was his hero, his protector. When Garrett died, Colton swore he'd make me pay. Not through the law, he knows I'd probably win in a fair trial, but through suffering, through making me lose everything I care about." "Like he lost his brother." "Exactly." Clara set down her coffee cup. "So what do we do?" Clara, this is my fight. If he threatens this land, it's my fight too. If he threatens those babies, it's definitely my fight." Jonah stared at her. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Then tell me." He sat down heavily. "Colton has money, power, connections. He can hire men like Silas Crane, men who operate in the shadows, who don't care about laws or morals. If he decides to come at us with force, then we'll be ready." "How?" "It's just the two of us." Clara thought about Winnie Tucker, about Sheriff Holloway, about all the people in town who had known her father, respected her mother, watched her fight alone for 3 years. "It doesn't have to be." Jonah looked at her, hope and fear warring in his eyes. "You'd really do this, stand with me against all of that?" Clara reached across the table and took his hand. "I told you, together." He held her gaze for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "Together," he whispered. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and red. Inside, 2 people sat at a kitchen table holding hands, making promises they weren't sure they could keep, but making them anyway. Because sometimes, that's all hope is, a promise made in the dark, waiting for the light. Clara rode into Willow Springs before noon the next day. She'd left Jonah with the babies and a loaded rifle, promising to be back before dark. He'd wanted to come, but they both knew a strange man asking questions would raise more suspicion than answers. The town was quiet for a Wednesday. A few horses tied outside the saloon, a woman sweeping the steps of the general store, an old man smoking on the post office porch. Clara dismounted in front of the sheriff's office and tied her horse to the rail. Marcus Holloway looked up when she entered. He was a big man gone soft around the middle, but still strong in the shoulders. His limp was more pronounced these days, the old war wound aching in the cold. "Clara Dawson." He set down his coffee cup. "Been wondering when you'd show up. You've heard? I hear everything." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Tell me what you need." Clara sat. "There's a man at my ranch. A good man. He's got 2 babies and a past that's catching up to him. The drifter folks are whispering about. His name is Jonah McAllister. 3 years ago he killed a man in Missouri. Self-defense. The man's brother is a sheriff there, and he sent a private investigator to bring Jonah back." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "That's a complicated situation. It gets worse. My uncle Harlan is trying to take my land using some clause in my father's will. He's filing a petition next month. I heard about that too. Is there anything you can do?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He rubbed his jaw, his eyes distant. "Your father was a good man, Clara, one of the best I ever knew. He pulled me out of a ditch at Antietam when everyone else left me for dead." He met her eyes. "I owe him my life. That means I owe you whatever help I can give." Clara felt something loosen in her chest. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. The law is the law. If this investigator has legitimate papers, I can't stop him from taking McAllister back to Missouri. And if he doesn't, then he's just another outsider causing trouble on my territory." Marcus smiled grimly. "And I don't take kindly to outsiders causing trouble." Clara stood. "There's something else." "What?" "Jonah didn't murder anyone. The man he killed was attacking his woman, trying to hurt her. Jonah defended her and the man fell wrong." "Can he prove it?" "I don't know, but I believe him." Marcus studied her face. "You care about this man." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Clara said. "I do." "Then bring him to me, tomorrow. I want to hear his story myself. And if you believe him, then we'll figure out how to keep him breathing." Marcus stood and extended his hand. "Your father would be proud of you, Clara. Fighting for what's right even when it's hard." Clara shook his hand. "He taught me well." She left the sheriff's office feeling lighter than she had in days. It didn't last. Silas Crane was waiting by her horse. "Miss Dawson?" He tipped his hat politely. "Lovely day for a ride." Clara's hand moved toward the rifle in her saddle. "I told you to stay off my land." "We're not on your land. We're in town." He smiled thinly. "Public property." "What do you want?" "Just a conversation." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You seem like a sensible woman. Practical. I respect that. Get to the point." "The point is this: Jonah McAllister is a dead man walking. Colton Pemberton has resources you can't imagine. Money men influence. Eventually he'll get what he wants." "And what does he want?" "Jonah. Alive, preferably, but he's flexible on that point." Clara felt ice in her veins. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Silas's pale eyes bored into hers. "You can fight this, Miss Dawson. You can stand beside him, make noble speeches, play the hero. But in the end, you'll lose. The only question is how much you lose along the way." "You don't know me very well." "I know enough. I know you've been alone for 3 years. I know your uncle wants your land. I know you're desperate for something to hold on to." He paused. "I know what desperation makes people do." Clara stepped forward until they were inches apart. "Let me tell you what I know," she said quietly. "I know that my father survived a war, built a ranch from nothing, and raised a daughter who doesn't scare easy. I know that my mother buried 2 children before me and still got up every morning with a smile. I know that I've faced wolves and blizzards and men like you, and I'm still standing." She grabbed her horse's reins. "So take your threats back to Colton Pemberton. Tell him Clara Dawson isn't for sale, and neither is anyone under her protection." She mounted and looked down at him. "And if you come near my ranch again, I'll put a bullet in you myself." She rode away without looking back, but her hands were shaking the whole way home. Jonah met her at the gate. "What happened? You look..." "Inside. Now." They went into the house. Clara checked on the babies, both sleeping peacefully, then turned to face Jonah. "I talked to Sheriff Holloway. He wants to meet you tomorrow." "Is that good?" "It could be. He knew my father. He's willing to listen." Jonah's shoulders relaxed slightly. "That's something." "There's more." Clara took a breath. "Silas Crane found me in town. He made it clear that Colton Pemberton isn't going to stop." Jonah's face went hard. "What did he say?" "That you're a dead man. That eventually they'll get what they want." Clara paused. "That I should give you up while I still can." "Maybe you should. Don't start that again." "Clara, he's right about one thing. This is only going to get worse. If you stand with me..." "I already told you my answer." "But, Jonah..." Clara crossed to him and grabbed his arms. "Look at me." He met her eyes. "I'm not doing this because I'm desperate. I'm not doing this because I'm lonely. I'm doing this because for the first time in 3 years, I've found something worth fighting for." Her voice cracked. "Don't you dare try to take that away from me." Jonah stared at her for a long moment. Then his hands came up to cup her face. "Clara May Dawson," he whispered. "What did I ever do to deserve you? You knocked on my door." He laughed, a sound that was half sob. "I almost didn't. I almost kept walking." "But you didn't." "No. Something told me to stop. Something said this was the place." Clara leaned into his touch. "Then trust that something. Trust me." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a world gone mad. "I trust you," he said into her hair. "God help me. I trust you." They stood like that until Elijah cried, breaking the spell. Clara pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I'll get him." "No, let me." Jonah crossed to the cradle and lifted his son. "Hey, little man, it's okay. Papa's here." Clara watched him rock the baby, humming softly, his whole body gentled by the tiny life in his arms. She thought about what Silas had said, about desperation, about losing. Maybe he was right. But watching Jonah with his sons, feeling the warmth of the fire, hearing the wind outside, and knowing she wasn't facing it alone, maybe some things were worth losing everything for. The next morning they rode to town together. Winnie had agreed to watch the babies arriving at dawn with a basket of food and a rifle slung across her back. "You be careful," she said to Clara. "Both of you." "We will." "And Jonah." Winnie fixed him with a stern gaze. "You hurt this girl, I'll shoot you myself." Jonah nodded solemnly. "Yes, ma'am. I believe you would." "Good. Now get going. Marcus doesn't like to be kept waiting." The ride to town was quiet. Clara could feel Jonah's tension in the way he held the reins, the set of his jaw. "It's going to be fine," she said. "You don't know that." "No, but I believe it anyway." He looked at her. "How do you do that? Believe in things you can't prove." "Practice." Clara smiled faintly. "And stubbornness." Sheriff Holloway was waiting for them in his office. He'd cleared his desk, set out 3 cups of coffee, and closed the blinds. "Sit down, both of you." They sat. "Mr. McAllister?" Marcus leaned forward. "I want to hear your story. All of it. From the beginning." Jonah took a breath. "Where do you want me to start?" "Start with Hannah. Start with how you met her." So Jonah told him. He told him about Hannah, beautiful, stubborn, full of light. About how they'd met at a barn dance in Missouri, how she'd laughed at his clumsy dancing and taught him the steps herself. About how her father had disapproved because Jonah was poor landless nobody. He told him about Garrett Pemberton, rich, powerful, obsessed. How he'd pursued Hannah for years, sent her gifts, made promises her father wanted her to accept. How she'd refused him again and again because she loved Jonah. He told him about the night Garrett came to their cabin, drunk, raging, saying if he couldn't have her, no one would. How he'd grabbed Hannah, thrown her against the wall, started hitting her. I pulled him off her. Jonah said, his voice flat with old pain. We fought. He was bigger than me, stronger, but I had more to lose. How did he die? I pushed him. He fell backward, hit his head on a rock by the fireplace. Didn't get up. Did he die right away? No, he lived 2 more days, long enough for his brother to ride over, see what happened, and decide I was a murderer. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Were there witnesses? Just Hannah. And she? Jonah swallowed. She went into labor that night. The stress, the fear, it brought the babies early. She was bleeding too much. I rode for a doctor, but by the time I got back... He couldn't finish. Clara reached over and took his hand. She died, Marcus asked softly. She named them first, Ezra and Elijah, after her grandfathers. Jonah's voice broke. Then she made me promise to keep them safe. And she was gone. The office was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Marcus stood and walked to the window. He stood there for a long time, staring out at the street. I've seen a lot of men in my time, he said finally. Good men, bad men, men who were somewhere in between. I've learned to read them. He turned back to Jonah. You're not a murderer, Mr. McAllister. You're a man who protected his family. Jonah's breath caught. Does that mean? It means I believe you, but believing isn't enough. Marcus returned to his desk. This investigator Crane, does he have legal papers? I don't know. If he does, I can't stop him from taking you back to Missouri. But if he's operating outside the law, if Pemberton sent him to do harm rather than seek justice... Marcus smiled grimly. Then I can make his life very difficult. What do you need from us? Proof. Something that shows Crane isn't here legally. A witness who heard him make threats. Anything that gives me grounds to run him out of town. Clara spoke up. He threatened me yesterday. Said Jonah was a dead man, that Pemberton was flexible about whether he came back alive. Did anyone else hear this? No, we were alone. Then it's your word against his. Marcus sighed. That's not enough. Not yet. What if we could get him to threaten someone else? Someone who could testify? Marcus raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? Clara's mind was racing. Crane thinks I'm desperate. He thinks I can be pressured into giving Jonah up. What if I let him believe that? What if I arranged a meeting, made him think I was ready to deal? Clara, no. Jonah shook his head. I won't let you put yourself in danger. It wouldn't be dangerous if we did it right. A public place, witnesses nearby. Clara looked at Marcus. You could be there. Hidden. If he threatens me again, you'd hear it yourself. Marcus considered this. It's risky. Everything is risky. At least this gives us a chance. Jonah stood abruptly. I said no. I won't have you. It's not your decision. Clara stood to face him. This is my town, my land, my fight. You said we'd do this together. That means trusting me to fight my own battles. Not like this. Exactly like this. Clara's voice softened. Jonah, I'm not helpless. I've been taking care of myself for 3 years. Let me take care of this too. He stared at her, fear and frustration warring in his eyes. If anything happened to you, nothing will happen. I'll be careful. You don't know that. No, but I know this is our best chance. She took his hands. Trust me, please. Jonah closed his eyes. When he opened them, the fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Pride. Acceptance. "All right," he said quietly. "But I want to be nearby, close enough to help if things go wrong." "Agreed." Clara turned to Marcus. "Can you set it up?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Tomorrow night, the saloon. I'll spread word that you're looking to talk to Crane, make a deal. He'll come. And you'll be there, in the back room, listening to every word." Clara took a breath. "Then we have a plan." They left the sheriff's office as the sun reached its peak. The town was busier now, people moving between stores, wagons rumbling down the main street. Clara was halfway to her horse when she saw him. Harlan Dawson stood on the boardwalk outside the general store, watching her with a smirk that made her stomach turn. "Niece." He tipped his hat mockingly. "Heard you were in town, making plans with the sheriff. None of your business. Everything on Dawson land is my business, or it will be soon." He stepped down onto the street, blocking her path. "1 year, Clara. Less than that now. Then that ranch belongs to me. It'll never belong to you. The law says different." Harlan's eyes slid to Jonah. "Unless you're planning to marry this vagrant. Is that your game? Tie yourself to some nobody just to keep me from what's rightfully mine?" Jonah stepped forward. "I'd watch my mouth if I were you." "Would you now?" Harlan laughed. "You're nobody's son. You've got nothing. And when Clara realizes that she'll toss you aside like the trash you are." Clara moved between them. "Enough. Get out of my way, Harlan." "Or what? You'll shoot me?" He leaned closer, his breath sour with whiskey. "You're just like your mother, all fire, no sense. She thought she was better than everyone, too. Look where it got her." Something snapped in Clara. She slapped him. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Harlan staggered back, his hand flying to his cheek, his eyes wide with shock. "Don't you ever speak about my mother again." Clara's voice shook with rage. "Not ever. Do you understand me?" Harlan's shock turned to fury. "You'll regret that, girl. I swear to God you'll regret that." "I already regret that you're my blood." Clara pushed past him. "Stay away from my ranch. Stay away from my family. Or next time it won't be my hand you feel." She mounted her horse and rode away, Jonah close behind. They were a mile out of town before either of them spoke. "Clara." She didn't answer. Her hands were trembling on the reins. "Clara, look at me." She pulled her horse to a stop and turned to face him. "That was stupid. I know. I lost my temper. I was going to say magnificent." She blinked. "What?" Jonah was smiling, a real smile that reached his eyes. "I've never seen anything like that. You stood up to him. In front of the whole town. He insulted my mother." "I know, and you defended her honor." Jonah shook his head. "Clara, do you have any idea how brave you are?" "I don't feel brave. I feel scared." "That's what makes it brave." He urged his horse closer until their knees were touching. "You're scared, but you fight anyway. You protect what you love, no matter the cost." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm tired of fighting alone." "You're not alone anymore." Jonah reached out and cupped her face. "You've got me. You've got those babies. You've got people in this town who believe in you. And enemies who want to destroy us. Then we'll destroy them first." His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't felt fall. "Together. Remember." Clara nodded, unable to speak. Jonah leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. "Together," he whispered. They stayed like that for a long moment. Two people on horseback in the middle of a frozen road, holding on to each other like the world depended on it. Maybe it did. The next night came faster than Clara expected. She dressed carefully, choosing a plain blue dress that wouldn't draw attention. She tucked a small pistol into her boot, just in case. Jonah watched her from the doorway, his face tight with worry. I don't like this. You've said that 14 times today. Because it's true 14 times. Clara crossed to him and took his hands. I'll be fine. Marcus will be in the back room. You'll be in the alley outside. Nothing will happen. You can't know that. No, but I can know that if I don't do this, Crane will keep pushing until something breaks. She squeezed his hands. Let me do this. Let me fight for us. Jonah pulled her close, holding her tight. If anything happens, it won't. But if it does, Jonah, she pulled back to look at him. I'll be fine. Say it with me. He closed his eyes. You'll be fine. Again. You'll be fine. Good. She kissed his cheek. Now go check on the babies. Winnie says Elijah's been fussy. She left before he could argue more. The ride to town was cold and dark. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the wind cut through her coat like knives. But Clara barely felt it. Her mind was focused on one thing, getting Silas Crane to show his hand. The saloon was half empty when she arrived. A few cowboys at the bar, a poker game in the corner, a woman in a red dress sitting alone by the piano. Clara ordered whiskey she didn't intend to drink and waited. Crane arrived exactly at 9. He walked in like he owned the place, his black coat pristine, his pale eyes scanning the room until they found her. Miss Dawson. He sat across from her without invitation. I'm surprised you came. I've been thinking about what you said. Have you? You were right about some things. About desperation. About knowing when to cut your losses. Crane's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm listening. Clara leaned forward. I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? I give you Jonah. You leave me alone. My land, my family, everything untouched. Crane studied her face. And what makes you think I'd agree to that? Because it's easier than fighting. Because Colton Pemberton gets what he wants without a mess. Clara paused. And because I'm tired. Tired of what? Of being afraid. Of waiting for the other shoe to drop. She let her voice crack slightly. I just want this to be over. Crane was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. I knew you were practical. Is that a yes? That depends. How do I know this isn't a trap? Clara forced herself to laugh. A trap with what I'm one woman against Colton Pemberton's money and power. You said it yourself, I can't win. No, you can't. Crane leaned back. All right, Miss Dawson, tell me how this works. Tomorrow night, I'll tell Jonah I need him to check the fence line on the north pasture. He'll be alone unarmed. You can take him then. And if he resists? Clara swallowed. He won't. I'll make sure of it. Crane studied her for a long moment. Then he stood. You've made the right choice, Miss Dawson. I'll have men ready tomorrow. And when this is over, he paused. I'll make sure Mr. Pemberton knows how cooperative you were. He tipped his hat and walked out. Clara sat frozen until he was gone. Then she stood on shaking legs and made her way to the back room. Marcus was waiting. Did you hear everything? Every word. Marcus's face was grim. He's planning to ambush an unarmed man. That's not justice. That's murder. Can you stop him? With what he just said, I can arrest him. Hold him until I wire Missouri for confirmation of his authority. Marcus smiled tightly. My guess is that confirmation won't come. Clara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. So it's over. Not yet. Crane's just the messenger. Colton Pemberton will send others. Then what do? We buy time. We build a case. We show the world that Jonah McAllister isn't a murderer. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. You did good tonight, Clara. Your father would be proud. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start fighting back for real. Clara rode home under a sky full of stars. When she reached the ranch, Jonah was waiting on the porch. He stood as she approached, his face pale with fear. Well, it worked. Clara dismounted and walked into his arms. It worked, Jonah. Marcus heard everything. He's going to arrest Crane tomorrow. Jonah held her tight, his whole body trembling. You're okay. You're really okay. I'm fine. I told you. I know. But I didn't believe it until now. He pulled back to look at her. Clara Dawson, you are the bravest woman I've ever known. I'm the most terrified woman you've ever known. Same thing. He kissed her forehead. Same thing. They stood on the porch for a long time, holding each other, watching the stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow would bring new battles. But tonight, they had won. And that was enough. The arrest happened at dawn. Clara watched from the general store window as Sheriff Holloway and 2 deputies dragged Silas Crane out of the inn. The investigator's face was twisted with rage, his polished composure shattered. This is unlawful, Crane shouted. I have authority from— You have nothing. Marcus shoved him toward the jail. No papers, no warrant, just threats and intimidation. That doesn't fly in my town. Clara felt a fierce satisfaction watching Crane disappear behind the jailhouse door. One enemy down. But she knew it wouldn't last. Jonah was waiting when she got home. He stood on the porch with Ezra in his arms, watching her ride up. Is it done? It's done. Crane's in jail. For how long? Clara dismounted and tied her horse. Marcus is holding him for threatening a citizen. Could be a week, maybe 2, while he wires Missouri for information. And then, we'll see what comes back. Jonah nodded slowly. You know Pemberton will send more men. I know. This isn't over. I know that too. Clara walked up the steps and touched Ezra's cheek. The baby gurgled happily. But we bought ourselves time. That's more than we had yesterday. They went inside together. Winnie was in the kitchen feeding Elijah with practiced ease. She looked up when they entered. Heard the commotion from town. That snake finally got what was coming to him. For now. Clara hung her coat. Thank you for staying with the babies. Wouldn't be anywhere else. Winnie handed Elijah to Jonah. Now I've got news. Bad news. Clara's stomach tightened. What? Your uncle's been making moves. He filed his petition early. Judge Morrison is reviewing it tomorrow. Tomorrow, he said next month? He lied. Imagine that. Winnie's voice was bitter. Virgil Jr. was bragging about it at the saloon last night. Said the land would be theirs by week's end. Clara sank into a chair. How can he do this? The clause says I have until I'm 35. Apparently there's another provision. Something about moral fitness to hold property. Winnie's jaw tightened. He's claiming you're unfit because you're harboring a fugitive. Jonah's not a fugitive. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what Harlan can make people believe. Jonah set Elijah in the cradle and turned to Clara. His face was pale. This is my fault. Don't start. If I hadn't come here, then I'd still be alone and Harlan would have found another excuse. Clara stood and faced him. He's been waiting for this chance since my father died. You're not the cause. You're just the weapon he's using. What do we do? Clara thought hard. We go to the hearing. We fight. We show the judge that Harlan's claims are lies. Will that work? I don't know. Clara looked at Winnie. Can you get word to Marcus? I need him at that hearing. Already done. He'll be there. Winnie grabbed her coat. You two get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She left, and the house fell silent, except for the baby's soft breathing. Jonah crossed to Clara and took her hands. Whatever happens tomorrow, don't. Clara shook her head. Don't talk like we've already lost. I'm not. I'm just— He paused. I want you to know something. What? These past weeks with you have been the best of my life, even with everything, even with Crane and Harlan and all of it. He lifted her hands to his lips. You saved me, Clara. Not just from the cold, from myself. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. You saved me too. How? By reminding me what it feels like to not be alone. They stood there, hands clasped, foreheads touching. Whatever happens tomorrow, Clara whispered, we face it together. Together. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome. What if Harlan won? What if the judge believed his lies? What if she lost everything her parents had built? A soft knock on her door made her sit up. Clara, Jonah's voice quiet. You awake? Yes. He opened the door. He was still dressed, his hair disheveled from lying down without sleeping. I can't stop thinking, he said. Neither can I. He crossed to her bed and sat on the edge. I've been going over everything, looking for a way out. Find anything. Maybe. He hesitated. What if I testified, told the judge everything about Hannah, about Garrett, about why I'm running? You'd be admitting to killing a man. In self-defense. And if I tell the truth, maybe it takes away Harlan's ammunition. He can't call you unfit for harboring a fugitive if I prove I'm not a fugitive. Clara considered this. It's risky. The judge might not believe you. He might not. But it's better than hiding. Jonah met her eyes. I'm tired of hiding, Clara. I've been running for 3 years. I want to stop. Even if it means prison. Even if it means prison. His voice broke. At least the boys would have you. At least they'd be safe. Clara reached out and grabbed his arm. Stop. Stop right there. Clara. No. Listen to me. She pulled him closer. I am not raising your sons while you rot in some Missouri jail. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win, and then we're going to build a life together. All of us. You can't promise that. Watch me. She pulled him onto the bed and into her arms. He resisted for a moment, then collapsed against her, his whole body shaking. I'm scared, he whispered. So am I. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you. Then don't. Clara held him tighter. Don't give up. Don't let them win. They lay there together, holding each other until exhaustion finally pulled them under. When Clara woke, it was dawn and Jonah was gone. She found a note on the pillow. Gone to check the north fence, back before the hearing. Don't worry. Don't worry. Clara's heart seized. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. She threw on her clothes and ran outside. The sun was just coming up, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful. She saddled her horse and rode hard toward the north pasture. She found Jonah's horse first, standing alone by the fence line. No rider. Jonah! Clara screamed. Jonah! Silence. She dismounted and followed the tracks in the snow. Jonah's boot prints clear and fresh. Then other tracks. Multiple horses. Signs of a struggle. Blood on the snow. Clara's world tilted. No, 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 no. She ran, following the tracks until they reached the tree line and disappeared. Whoever took him had horses. She'd never catch them on foot. She mounted and rode back to the ranch, her mind racing. Crane was in jail. Who else would Pemberton? Colton Pemberton had sent more men. Crane was just the advance scout. The real threat had been waiting, watching, planning. And now they had Jonah. Clara burst into the house. Winnie was there, having arrived to watch the babies. What happened? You look... They took him. Clara was already grabbing ammunition, loading her rifle. Pemberton's men. They took Jonah. Winnie's face went white. When? This morning. Early. The tracks lead north into the hills. You can't go after them alone. Watch me. Clara, stop. Winnie grabbed her arm. Think. If you go charging in there alone, you'll get killed. Then what happens to those babies? Clara stopped. Looked at the cradle where Ezra and Elijah slept, oblivious. What am I supposed to do? Just let them take him? No. But you need help. Winnie's eyes were sharp. Get Marcus. Get anyone who'll ride with you. Don't do this alone. Clara took a shaking breath. The hearing. Forget the damn hearing. Harlan can wait. This can't. Clara nodded. Watch the babies. With my life. Clara rode to town faster than she'd ever ridden before. Marcus was at the jailhouse when she arrived eating breakfast at his desk. Clara? What? They took Jonah. She was breathless, wild. Pemberton's men. This morning, I found blood. Marcus stood so fast his chair fell over. Where? North pasture. Tracks lead into the hills. How many? I don't know. 3, maybe 4 horses. Marcus grabbed his rifle and his coat. Jasper, Tommy, saddle up. Now. Within minutes, 4 riders were headed north. Clara led them to where she'd found the tracks. Marcus dismounted and examined the ground. You're right. Multiple riders. And this blood. He touched it. Still fresh. We're not far behind. Then let's go. They followed the tracks into the hills. The terrain got rougher, the trees thicker. Clara's heart pounded with every step. After an hour, they heard voices. Marcus held up his hand. Everyone stopped. Ahead, he pointed. Through those trees. I count 3 men. Horses tied to the left. Clara squinted. She could see them now. A small clearing. 3 men in heavy coats standing around a fire. And tied to a tree bloody and beaten Jonah. She started to dismount, but Marcus grabbed her arm. Wait. He's hurt. I have to. You go in there now, you get him killed. Marcus's voice was hard. We do this smart. Jasper, you go around left. Tommy right. Clara, you stay with me. I'm not staying anywhere. Then stay behind me and don't shoot until I do. They spread out, circling the clearing. Clara moved on instinct, her rifle ready, her eyes locked on Jonah. He was alive, battered, bleeding from a cut above his eye, but alive. One of the men kicked him. Where's the money McAllister Colton says you stole from his brother? I didn't steal anything. Jonah's voice was hoarse. Garrett was a monster. Your boss knows it. Our boss knows you killed his kin. That's all that matters. Another kick. Jonah grunted, but didn't cry out. Clara raised her rifle. Now, Marcus said quietly. Everything happened at once. Jasper fired from the left. 1 man went down. Tommy fired from the right. Another dove for cover. Clara aimed at the 3rd man, the one standing over Jonah, and pulled the trigger. The shot hit him in the shoulder. He spun, screaming, grabbing for his gun. Clara was already moving. She sprinted into the clearing, rifle ready, and pressed the barrel to his head. Don't! He froze. Hands up, now! He complied, face twisted with pain and fury. Marcus and the others secured the remaining men. 1 dead, 1 wounded, 1 unhurt, but terrified. Clara ran to Jonah and cut his ropes with her knife. Jonah, Jonah, look at me. He lifted his head. 1 eye was swelling shut, and blood dripped from his lip. But he smiled. Took you long enough. Clara laughed, a sound that was half sob. Shut up, just shut up. She helped him to his feet. He swayed but stayed upright, leaning heavily on her shoulder. The babies. Safe. Winnie's with them. Thank God. He closed his eyes. Thank God. Marcus approached, his face grim. We need to get him back to town. He needs a doctor. Can you ride? Clara asked Jonah. I'll manage. They mounted. Jonah rode with Clara, his arms around her waist, his head resting against her back. She could feel him trembling. Stay awake, she said. Talk to me. About what? Anything. Just keep talking. I love you. Clara's breath caught. What? I love you. His voice was faint but clear. I should have said it before. I was scared. But I'm done being scared. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. I love you too. Good. Because I'm planning to marry you. Is that a proposal? No. A proposal should have a ring, and flowers, and me not covered in blood. He laughed weakly. This is just a promise. Then I accept your promise. Even though I'm a mess. Especially because you're a mess. They rode into town, just as the sun reached its peak. Doc Peterson met them at his office and took Jonah inside. Clara wanted to follow, but Marcus held her back. Let him work. Jonah's tough. He'll be fine. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. Marcus's eyes were kind. He's got too much to live for now. Clara waited on the porch, pacing, praying, bargaining with God. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, Doc Peterson emerged, wiping his hands on a cloth. He'll live. Couple of cracked ribs, a lot of bruises, a cut that needed stitches. But nothing that won't heal. Clara sagged against the railing. Can I see him? He's asking for you. She went inside. Jonah lay on a cot, bandaged and pale, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. Hey. Hey yourself. She sat beside him and took his hand. You scared me. Scared myself. He squeezed her fingers. I thought I'd never see you again. Never see the boys. That's when I knew. Knew what? That I couldn't let them win. That I had to fight. He pulled her hand to his chest. You gave me that, Clara. You gave me something worth fighting for. She leaned down and kissed him. Soft, gentle, mindful of his injuries. Don't ever leave me again. I won't. I promise. A knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus entered, his face troubled. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got a problem. Clara straightened. What? Those men we captured, one of them's talking. Says Colton Pemberton's on his way. Left Missouri a week ago with a dozen riders. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. A dozen? They're not coming to arrest Jonah. They're coming to kill him, and anyone who stands in their way. Jonah tried to sit up. Clara pushed him back down. When? 3 days, maybe less. Clara looked at Jonah, looked at Marcus, looked at the future she'd been building crumbling before her eyes. Then something hardened inside her. Then we've got 3 days to get ready. Get ready for what? War. She stood, her jaw set, her eyes blazing. Colton Pemberton wants a fight. He's going to get one. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. What do you need? Guns. Men. Anyone willing to stand against Pemberton. Clara took a breath. And someone to marry us. Both men stared at her. What? Jonah's voice cracked. You heard me. Clara turned to him. You promised you'd marry me. Well, I'm collecting. Tonight, before Pemberton gets here. Clara, I can barely stand. You don't need to stand. You need to say 2 words, I do. Her voice softened. I'm not losing you, Jonah. Not to Pemberton, not to Harlan, not to anyone. If we're going to fight, we fight as a family. Jonah's eyes glistened. You're serious? I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He reached up and touched her face. Then yes, 1,000 times yes. Clara turned to Marcus. You know any preachers? Reverend Miller owes me a favor. Call it in, tonight, at my ranch. Marcus shook his head slowly, but he was smiling. You're something else, Clara Dawson. I'm about to be Clara McAllister. She looked at Jonah. If that's all right with you. More than all right. He pulled her down for another kiss. More than all right. That evening, in a small house surrounded by snow, with a wounded man standing on shaky legs and a woman holding his hand like she'd never let go, Reverend Miller spoke the words that made them one. Do you, Jonah Samuel McAllister, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Clara Mae Dawson, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. They kissed while Winnie cried, and Marcus looked on, and 2 babies slept peacefully in their cradle. It wasn't the wedding Clara had dreamed of as a girl. It was better, because it was real. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Clara and Jonah sat together by the fire. He was propped against pillows, his injuries making it hard to lie flat. She sat beside him, her head on his shoulder. "Wife," he said softly. "Husband." She smiled. "Feels strange." "Good strange. The best kind." He kissed her forehead. "Whatever happens, I know." "No. Let me say it." He took her hand. "Whatever happens, you've already given me more than I ever deserved. A home, a family, a future." His voice broke. "Thank you." Clara lifted her head to look at him. "We're not done yet. We're just getting started." "I know, but I wanted you to hear it, in case—" "There's no in case." She kissed him firmly. "We win this. Together. And then we spend the rest of our lives boring each other with farm work and baby noise." Jonah laughed. "That sounds perfect." "Then fight for it. Fight with me. Always." He pulled her closer. "Always." Outside, the wind picked up. Snow began to fall again, soft and silent. Somewhere out there, Colton Pemberton was riding closer with every passing hour. But inside this house, in this moment, there was only warmth. Only love. Only the beginning of something worth dying for. They came on the 3rd day. Clara spotted the dust cloud from the kitchen window. She'd been watching since dawn, coffee growing cold in her hands, waiting for what she knew was coming. "Jonah?" He was at the table cleaning his rifle. His ribs were still wrapped, his face still bruised, but his hands were steady. "I see them." Clara counted. 12 riders, just like Marcus said, moving in formation, unhurried, confident. They thought this would be easy. She intended to prove them wrong. "Get the babies to the root cellar," Clara said to Winnie. "Don't come out until one of us comes for you." Winnie grabbed Ezra and Elijah, her face pale but determined. "You come back for these boys, you hear me, both of you." "We will." Winnie disappeared through the back door. Clara heard the cellar hatch close and lock. She turned to Jonah. "You ready?" "No." He stood slinging the rifle over his shoulder. "But that never stopped me before." They walked out onto the porch together. Marcus was already there with Jasper and Tommy. 3 other men from town had ridden out before dawn. Old friends of Clara's fathermen who remembered what the Dawsons had done for this community. 8 against 12. Better odds than Clara had expected. The riders stopped 50 yards from the house. One man rode forward, separating from the group. Clara knew him instantly, not from meeting him, but from the way he held himself. The arrogance, the certainty, the cold calculation in his eyes. Colton Pemberton. He was younger than she'd imagined. 30, maybe 32. Clean-shaven, well-dressed, handsome, in the way that dangerous men often were. He removed his hat and studied the house, the defenders, the rifles aimed at his chest. "Mrs. McAllister." His voice carried easily. "That is your name now, isn't it? Congratulations on your nuptials." Clara didn't flinch. "Mr. Pemberton, you're trespassing." "Am I?" He smiled. "I prefer to think of it as collecting a debt." "There's no debt here. Your brother attacked an innocent woman. He got what he deserved." Colton's smile vanished. "Careful. That's my kin you're speaking of." "And Jonah is mine." Clara raised her rifle. "Turn around and go home. There's nothing for you here." "On the contrary, there's everything." Colton's eyes found Jonah. "Hello, McAllister. You've led me on quite a chase." Jonah stepped forward. "I'm done running, Colton. Whatever you came for, let's finish it." "Gladly." Colton gestured, and his men began to spread out. "I'd prefer not to hurt anyone else. Give me McAllister, and the rest of you can go." "Not happening." Marcus's voice was flat. "This man is under my protection. You want him, you go through me. Through all of us." Clara's voice didn't waver. Colton sighed. How noble, how pointless. He raised his hand. His men drew their weapons. "Last chance," Colton said. "Hand him over." Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. "Go to hell." Colton dropped his hand. The first shot cracked the morning silence. Everything exploded into chaos. Clara dove behind the porch railing, firing at the nearest rider. She missed, but he veered away, giving her time to reload. Jonah was beside her, shooting methodically despite his injuries. His face was white with pain, but his aim was true. One of Pemberton's men fell from his horse. Marcus and his deputies held the left flank. Jasper went down almost immediately, clutching his shoulder, but Tommy dragged him behind the water trough. The noise was deafening. Gunfire, screaming horses. Clara's ears rang. Her hands shook. But she kept shooting. One of Pemberton's men charged the porch. Clara shot him in the chest. He fell 3 feet from the steps. "Clara!" Jonah's voice, urgent. She turned. A rider was circling around the back of the house. The root cellar. The babies. Clara sprinted. She rounded the corner just as the rider dismounted. He had a torch in one hand, a pistol in the other. "Don't." Clara aimed at his head. He smiled and raised the torch toward the cellar door. She shot him. He dropped the torch, falling into the snow, hissing and dying. Clara stood over him, breathing hard. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't getting up either. She ran back to the front. The battle had shifted. Half of Pemberton's men were down or fleeing, but so were half of theirs. Tommy lay motionless near the fence. One of the volunteers clutched a bleeding leg, and Colton Pemberton was walking toward the house. Walking. Not riding. Not hiding. Just walking through the gunfire like it couldn't touch him. He stopped 10 feet from the porch. "Enough," he said. The shooting stopped. Clara didn't lower her rifle. "It's over, Pemberton. You've lost." "Have I?" He looked around at the carnage. "I count 3 of my men still standing. You've got, what, a crippled sheriff and a wounded husband. We've got enough." "No, you don't." Colton pulled a pistol from his belt. "Here's what's going to happen. McAllister comes with me, now, or I start shooting the people he loves." He aimed at Clara. Jonah stepped in front of her. "You want me? Fine. Let them go." "Jonah, no. Quiet." Jonah didn't take his eyes off Colton. "This is between us. It always was. Leave them out of it." Colton studied him. "You'd really die for them." Without hesitation. Something flickered in Colton's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "My brother would have run," he said slowly. "Would have saved himself and damned everyone else. I'm not your brother." "No, you're not." Colton lowered his gun slightly. "He told me you murdered him. Said you ambushed him, beat him, left him to die." He lied. "I'm beginning to think so." Colton's voice was quieter now. "I loved him. He was all I had. When he died, I wanted someone to pay. I wanted you to suffer the way I suffered." "I understand that." "Do you—" "I lost Hannah." Jonah's voice cracked. "I held her while she bled out, begging God to take me instead. I know exactly what grief makes you do." Colton stared at him for a long moment. The silence stretched. Then slowly, impossibly, he holstered his gun. "Go home," he said to his remaining men. "All of you, now." They hesitated. Now. They mounted and rode away, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Clara couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Pemberton." "Don't." He held up a hand. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because my brother was a monster, and I've spent 3 years pretending he wasn't." He looked at Jonah. Hannah came to see me once. Before she died. She told me what Garrett did to her. The threats. The violence. I didn't believe her. I thought she was trying to poison me against him. His voice broke. She was telling the truth, and I let her walk away. Let her go back to a cabin where my brother would eventually come to hurt her again. You didn't know, Jonah said quietly. I should have. That's what family does. We see what we want to see. Colton took a breath. I'm done seeing what I want. I'm done chasing ghosts. He turned and walked toward his horse. Pemberton! Clara's voice stopped him. He looked back. If you ever come near my family again. I won't. He mounted. You have my word, for whatever that's worth. He rode away. Clara watched until he disappeared. Then her knees gave out. Jonah caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you. He held her tight. I've got you. Clara pressed her face into his chest and sobbed. It was over. It was finally over. The aftermath was chaos. Doc Peterson arrived within the hour. Tommy was dead. Jasper would lose his arm. 2 of Pemberton's men died from their wounds. The rest were locked in Marcus's jail, awaiting transport to Cheyenne. Clara moved through it all in a daze, checking on the babies, thanking the men who'd fought, cleaning blood from her porch. Jonah stayed close, never more than arm's reach away. That night, after everyone had gone, they sat together on the porch. The babies were asleep inside. The house was quiet. It's really over, Clara whispered. For now. You think he'll come back? No. Jonah shook his head. You saw his face. He knew the truth all along. He just couldn't admit it. That's sad. It is. But it's not our burden to carry. He pulled her closer. We've got our own future to build. Clara leaned against him, exhausted but peaceful. What about Harlan? The petition. Marcus sent word to Judge Morrison, explained everything that happened. The judge postponed the hearing indefinitely. Jonah smiled. Turns out judges don't like it when people lie to them. So the land is safe. The land is safe. The babies are safe. We're safe. He kissed her forehead. It's done, Clara. She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. Spring came slowly that year. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth, hungry for seeds. The creek thawed and began to run again, filling the air with the sound of rushing water. Clara planted the first vegetables in early April. Jonah repaired the fences rebuilt. The chicken coop started work on expanding the barn. The babies grew fat and happy, crawling across the kitchen floor while Winnie pretended to chase them. Word spread through town about what had happened. About Clara and Jonah standing against Pemberton's men. About the wedding performed in the middle of war. People started coming by, not to gossip, but to help. Neighbors she barely knew showed up with tools, with seeds, with offers of labor. Your father helped build my barn 20 years ago, one old man said. About time I returned the favor. Clara didn't know what to say, so she just said thank you. Harlan Dawson disappeared after the battle. Some said he'd moved to California. Others said he'd drunk himself to death in Denver. Clara didn't care. He was gone. That was enough. Virgil Jr. tried to file his own petition once. Judge Morrison threw it out within minutes. The Dawson land belongs to Clara McAllister, the judge said publicly. Anyone who disputes that can take it up with me personally. No one did. On Clara's birthday, Jonah woke her early. Come with me. Where? Just come. He led her outside, past the barn, past the fence line to the top of the hill that overlooked the whole property. The sun was just rising, painting the world in gold and pink. I wanted you to see this, Jonah said. Your land. Our land. Everything we built. Clara looked out at the ranch. At the house her father had raised. At the fields her mother had tended. At the barn where 2 frozen babies had found warmth. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. Jonah turned her to face him. Clara, you gave me everything. A home, a family, a reason to stop running. You gave me the same. Then let me give you one more thing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple silver with a tiny sapphire that caught the morning light. I know we're already married, he said, but I never gave you a proper proposal, so I'm giving you one now. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Clara May McAllister, will you spend the rest of your life with me? Will you raise our boys with me? Will you grow old on this land with me? She couldn't speak. She just nodded. Jonah slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her. I love you, he whispered. I love you too. They stood on that hill until the sun was fully up, holding each other, watching their future spread out before them. 2 years later, the ranch had doubled in size. Jonah had bought the neighboring property when old Mr. Henderson passed. They raised cattle now and horses. The chicken coop held 50 birds. The vegetable garden fed half the town. Ezra and Elijah were 3 years old, running everywhere, getting into everything. They called Clara Mama and Jonah Papa, and couldn't remember a time before this house, this land, this family. Winnie had moved into the guest room permanently. She said it was to help with the boys, but everyone knew she just didn't want to be alone anymore. Marcus stopped by every Sunday for dinner. His limp was worse these days, but his spirit was strong. You know, he said one evening, watching the boys chase chickens across the yard, I never thought I'd see this place so full of life. Neither did I. Clara stood beside him on the porch. There was a time I thought I'd die here alone. What changed? Clara looked at Jonah, who was teaching Ezra how to hold a fishing rod. He knocked on my door. Marcus smiled. Best knock this town ever heard. That night, after the boys were asleep and the house was quiet, Clara found Jonah sitting on the porch. She sat beside him. What are you thinking about? Hannah. He said it quietly. I think about her sometimes. Wonder if she'd be happy. If she'd approve. She would. How do you know? Because she loved you, and she wanted those boys to have a good life. Clara took his hand. They have a good life, Jonah. The best. He squeezed her fingers. I still feel guilty sometimes. For what? For being happy, for moving on, like I'm betraying her memory. Clara turned to face him. You're not betraying anyone. You're honoring her. Every time you love those boys, every time you work this land, every time you choose to live instead of just surviving, that's honoring her. Jonah was quiet for a long moment. When did you get so wise? I learned from a man who walked through a blizzard to save his children. She kissed his cheek. That kind of love teaches you things. He pulled her close. They sat together in the darkness, listening to the crickets, watching the stars wheel overhead. Clara. Yes. Thank you. For what? For opening the door, for letting us in, for seeing something worth saving in a half-dead stranger with 2 frozen babies. Clara smiled. Thank you for knocking. I almost didn't. I know. You've told me. I'll keep telling you, every day, for the rest of our lives. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm counting on it. 5 years after that night in the blizzard, the Dawson McAllister Ranch was the most prosperous in the county. Clara had become a respected voice in the community. She sat on the town council, helped establish a school for local children, and organized the annual Harvest Festival. Jonah had earned a reputation as the hardest-working man in Wyoming. Farmers came from miles around to ask his advice. Young men sought him out, wanting to learn his methods. But what people remembered most wasn't the success. It was the story. The story of a desperate father who knocked on a stranger's door. The story of a woman who opened it. The story of 2 people who found each other in the darkest hour and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their lives. Ezra and Elijah grew up hearing that story. They told it to their friends, their sweethearts eventually, their own children, and every time they told it, they ended the same way. Mama always said, home isn't a place you find, it's a place you build. With your hands, with your heart, with the people you choose to love. And Papa always said the only past that matters is the one you choose to build from. Clara lived to see her grandchildren born. She held them the same way she'd held Ezra and Elijah, that frozen night close to her chest, breathing warmth into their tiny bodies. Jonah outlived her by 3 months. He died in his sleep peacefully with her ring still on his finger and her picture on the nightstand. They buried him beside her on the hill overlooking the ranch. The headstone read, Jonah and Clara McAllister. They knocked. They opened. They built. 1882. Forever. And on the ranch below, life went on. Children laughed. Crops grew. Horses ran. The wind still howled in winter. The snow still piled against the barn. But the door was always open. Because that's what the McAllisters believed. That love wasn't something you waited for. It was something you answered. Every time someone knocked.